Have you guys ever known anybody like that's different? And when I say different, I don't mean like weird or strange different, like my friend who used to be so into Super Mario Brothers and was so into him that he would actually jump like Mario himself, you know, like with his fist in the air and the leap. Not that kind of different, but I mean different like, wow, this person is different because he loves people in a different kind of way, or this person's different because she serves people in a different kind of way. And they're so different that you want to be like them. You want to take on that trait, and you want to be exactly like them. I know a few people like that. I can think of a guy who's different because he's compassionate. He's genuinely, sincerely compassionate, and you just want to talk to him. And then I know another guy who there's just something about him, like you want to hear what he has to say next, because what he has to say next is really important. It's just different. And so I mean that kind of different. We're in the series called Where the Wild Things Are, and this is the last week of the series. The first week we talked about hope. And we talked about the Israelites in Exodus, how God appeared or came to them and heard their cry and said, you know, I want to bring you out of here. And so that gave them hope, like, yes, we're going to make it out of here. Finally, we've been here for 400 years. And then we talked about fear, how the Israelites got stuck between this body of water, the Red Sea, and the Egyptians coming to attack them. And then God like stepped in and he saved them and let them go through the water, and they were saved from the Egyptians attacking them. And then we talked about adventure last week, about how God was providing all this food and water, and they're in the middle of the desert, in the middle of nowhere, and they're on this adventure, and along their adventure, God's providing for them. So we pick up here in Exodus chapter 34. And so last week we also talked about God getting angry because the Israelites built this golden calf. And so Moses comes down from a mountain, and there they are worshiping this calf, and he gets angry and he throws the stones down that had the 10 Commandments written on them. And so Moses goes back up to the mountain, and God gives him the 10 Commandments again. And so this is what it says. It says, "The Lord said to Moses, chisel out 2 stone tablets like the first ones, and I will write on them the words that were on the first tablets, which you broke. Be ready in the morning, and then come up on Mount Sinai. Present yourself to me there on top of the mountain. No one is to come with you or be seen anywhere on the mountain. Not even the flocks and herds may graze in front of the mountain." So Moses chiseled out 2 stone tablets like the first ones and went up Mount Sinai early in the morning, as the Lord had commanded him, and he carried the 2 stone tablets in his hands. Then the Lord came down in the cloud and stood there with him and proclaimed his name, the Lord. And he passed in front of Moses, proclaiming, the Lord, the compassionate and gracious God, slow to anger, abounding in love and faithfulness, maintaining love to thousands and forgiving wickedness, rebellion, and sin. Yet he does not leave the guilty unpunished. He punishes the children and their children for the sin of the fathers to the 3rd and 4th generation. Moses bowed to the ground at once and worshipped. "O Lord, if I have found favor in your eyes," he said, "then let the Lord go with us. Although this is a stiff-necked people, forgive our wickedness and our sin and take us as your inheritance." Then the Lord said, "I am making a covenant with you. Before all your people, I will do wonders never before done in any nation in all the world. The people you live among will see how awesome is the work that I, the Lord, will do for you. Obey what I command you today." So do you see what's happening? Like Moses goes up to get these stone tablets, and the Lord, like for the first time ever, if you read Genesis or Exodus, you never see this, but God comes like out of nowhere in this cloud or whatever, and and he proclaims his name, and he says something about himself. He's never said anything about himself before. And so we get to know who God is a little bit. We find out that he's compassionate. We find out that he's gracious, that he's slow to anger, that he's abounding in love, that he's faithful, and that he maintains love to the thousands of generations, and he forgives wickedness, rebellion, and sin, and all this, and we find out how powerful God is. And so that's amazing that God would come down, and not come down, but God would say that about himself to Moses, and Moses would be privileged to know that. And so this is what happens later on, 34 verse 29. When Moses came down from Mount Sinai with the 2 tablets of the testimony in his hands, he was not aware that his face was radiant because he had spoken with the Lord. When Aaron and all the Israelites saw Moses, his face was radiant, and they were afraid to come near him. But Moses called to them. So Aaron and all the leaders of the community came back to him, and he spoke to them. Afterward, all the Israelites came near him, and he gave them all the commands the Lord had given on Mount Sinai. When Moses finished speaking to them, he put a veil over his face. But whenever he entered into the Lord's presence to speak with him, he removed the veil until he came out. And then he came out and told the Israelites what he had been commanded. They saw that his face was radiant. Then Moses would put the veil back over his face until he went to speak with the Lord. So he comes down from the mountain after having this experience with God, and God saying all these things about himself, and Moses getting to know who God is. And so he comes down from the mountain, and people are freaked out because he looks completely different. There's something about him that is completely different. And so they make him put this veil over his face whenever he's around them. And then when he goes to God, he goes to God with who he is. And so what makes you different? What makes you different? God appears to Moses and says that he's gracious and that he's compassionate and all these things. And Moses experiences that. And that makes Moses different. So what is it that makes you different?